Okay, well, we're going to get started. Good evening, everybody. Thank you guys for spending some time with us here. I'm really excited to do another live session. Got all the technology set up, and I think we're ready to go. We are here in beautiful western Montana. Just yesterday it was snowing and freezing, and now today it's super sunny and very comfortably warm. So who knows what the weather holds here the next few days, but over here right now it's looking pretty good. Beautiful, beautiful day. Hope you guys are doing well. I hope your experience here for today has been good, and thank you for spending some time with us this evening. Tonight we got a lot of things to talk about. We're going to be sharing a number of different techniques and taking us the next steps more forward with some of our sculptural work. But I want to make sure that we understand how this system works. It's relatively new for a lot of people, so we're going to be making sure that every so often people understand what's happening. We are going to be posting questions on the Google Plus platform. If you have access to that, if you're watching this through the Google Plus platform and you're watching it live, you can jump on board and ask a question. If it's pertinent to what we're talking about, great. If it's anything related to the project, great. This session today is an open session for anyone, so it's not just private membership, but we will be talking mostly about where we're at right now when it comes to our current project, which is the dining room chair project that we're working on. So once again, we have the Q&A session right on the side of our window. And if you post a question there at some point, I will definitely get up to asking that. But in the meanwhile, I want to share with you a couple things that we have going on. I'm about ready to head out of here tomorrow afternoon. We're going to be driving all the way over to Des Moines, Iowa, to get a chance to be over with the gang at Wood Magazine. We're going to be doing the Weekend with Wood conference. So I got a lot of driving ahead of me. I've got my shop all torn apart, so I'm trying to pack up for that trip. Actually, I'll be gone for a number of weeks. My next session that we'll be doing here in 2 weeks on a Monday night, we're going to try to do from on the road. So it'll be a little bit of a different format, but it should be fun. I'll share with you some ideas as to what we're going to be talking about then. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. Tonight, my main goal is to share some thoughts about sculptural woodworking. We're right at that stage in the progress. With our current videos. We're posting a couple more even this week. We have one going up right now. That is our next step with some of the joinery techniques, or at least the foundational cuts that we do for our joinery. But we're heading into the realm of sculptural work. And I wanted to make sure that I give you enough information and anticipation of that when it comes to things like sculpting a seat, or even just the basic premise of what sculptural woodworking is. So I figured I'd give you two examples here this evening that I really want to give you a chance to practice on before it comes time to working on it in your real project. The first thing I want you to see is the process of sculpting an outside round on a piece of wood. We are typically maybe stepping up to a router to do something like that, but with the sculptural work that we have to do, there's a lot of free-form work, there's a lot of shaping and changing of profiles and movement of details that can only really be accomplished with some handheld tools. So I want to kind of step into that and share with you some of that process. So a couple tools that I'm going to introduce tonight, and you may already know about this, but maybe we'll give you some new insights on it. The first thing that you're probably going to need to get access is a nice little marking gauge. I'll get up here a little close to the camera so you can see it. A little marking gauge is certainly going to be helpful in the early stages of learning this process. It's actually not absolutely critical when it comes to doing it when you really get the hang of it, but for the first, year or so, you could consider this your training wheels when it comes to setting yourself some very defined marks and limitations for our sculptural shapes we're trying to create. So there's one, a nice little marking gauge. There's a couple different styles. This one's got the big flat disc on it and the cutter wheel on the end here. Some of the nicer versions have a little markings on the actual shaft here that gives you, you know, dimensional measurements. This is a cheap one I have here at school, just one that I bought a long time ago, but it's a Shop Fox version. It's a little bit loose. This one, if I had it over to do it over again, I wouldn't be buying something like this because it's really hard to mount and lock down with just one hand. Some of the nicer ones from like Lee Valley and Veritas, the Veritas company, they've got just a little gasket that's in here, so it's easier to slide in and out and land on a mark. Plus, that's the one that has all the graded measurements on it. When it comes time to actually doing this work, we're going to need to try to find a way to create a round on the outside piece of you know, a profile. Maybe it's a template like this this leg template that I think this is from my bar stool. It's going to be a three-dimensional shape, and we'll be using this to create the dimension thickness at various different positions on the leg. Our dining room chair, we're going to have that on the front legs and the back legs specifically, so that's something you're going to want to use. Let me put the camera right down here to this little block of wood I got on our workbench and share with you some of the actual step-by-step process that I think is important to practice. So grab yourself a chunk of wood, maybe 10 or 12 inches long and about 6 inches wide, and we're going to start by just practicing how to create a solid and consistent round over on a straight edge piece of material here. So today I'm going to try to create a 3/4 inch radius round over. So I'm setting my marking gauge at a 3/4 inch limit mark, and that establishes the exit or the outside edge of my radius. So I'm going to mark that right on the top of my surface, and I know I'm in kind of a light color here, so I'm going to see if I can darken that up for you a little bit so you can see that a little bit better. There's the top side of this, and the same is going to happen on the bottom side. Now this is super simple because it's just a straight edge block of wood. It'll get more complicated here in just a minute. Oops. So that's the dimensional limits of my radius. I'm going to try to put that radius on. I'll put a little mark on the in profile so you can see what that looks like here. That'll be exiting right about here and exiting right about here. So my intention today is to put a nice little radius turn on this profile. Now, there's a chunk of material here that is really not necessary. It's kind of the waste area. If I had run this with a router, all that material would be turning into sawdust. I want you to take note, though, if I draw a 45-degree line right on that corner, it kind of lands right at the apex of that radius, the high point of that radius. And that is very important to know, because if I went deeper, let's say I wanted to go to a much larger radius. If I went deeper here, right, I would have to make that the limit and create a bigger sweeping radius. So right now my 3/4 inch radius is limited by, oh, not much more than about a 1/2 inch, maybe 5/8 inch wide, 45-degree angle mark. You'll notice that will come out, oh, about halfway the distance from our original mark and the edge of our material. About halfway is the exit of that. So I could come back and put my actual cut line that I'm going to cut to at about half the original dimension. So what did we have before? It was about 3/4 of an inch. So now this one will be set at about 3/8 of an inch, and that is the mark that I really care about. By the way, for those of you who have just joined, if you have any questions, you want to clarify, or if there's anything that we need to interact on this, feel free to jump on the Google Plus site, and we've got a Q&A session going simultaneously, so you can throw a question on there if you have any, and I'll be happy to respond to them. All right, so my next step here is just a second line. This is what I call the waste area, and it establishes the primary chamfer. It's the connection between those two lines that establishes the net height of our radius. I'm hoping the camera view is good enough that you can see that. We got a top mark and a bottom mark, actually two of them right now. Only ones I really care about are those inside ones. Now I'm going to introduce a couple of tools. Now if any of you have seen some of my seminars with the woodworking shows, a lot of these tools I've brought out at those shows, I want to introduce just a handful of them, hand tool wise. The first one, actually I've got one more over here. I packed them all away, and then I forgot to bring them out. So I got one more to grab here. There we are. The first set I want you to see, and this may be reviewed for some of you, but bear with me, is the microplane set. The microplanes you can get relatively easily at Woodcraft or Rockler, and they're relatively inexpensive, and they do a pretty good job at removing wood fairly quickly. They've got, I think, 3 different profiles primarily. They've got the flat profile, they've got a round profile. They also have a chisel point profile, like a little angle point I hardly ever use. So it's the rounds and the flats that are most important for me. So again, as far as a practicing technique, I highly encourage you to go do this. The first thing we're going to do with this kind of tool is just connect those 2 inside lines, those 3/8 lines. Make those as my primary chamfer. I'm only going to do a section down here because I want to introduce a handful of different tools so you can see this process in action. Okay, so that end, I've connected between those two. Extend that a little bit further. This may seem relatively simplistic now, but wait till we add some curves to this. It gets much more complicated here in a little bit. So this is the microplane. Very easy, very low cost, and for our sculptural project, literally, you could get away with just doing everything with this kind of a tool. You don't have to spend a lot extra money. You know, they're in the, I haven't priced one out lately, but in the $20 range, somewhere around there. Not too expensive. And the nice thing about this tool is you can actually take and pop out the cartridge in here. You could reverse it in the handle, so you can do it on the pull stroke, which is kind of nice, or you can do it on the push stroke. Either way, and you could, you know, if this ever really does get broken or dull, it's an easy replacement. So I do highly encourage you to pick one of these up, and mostly at Rockler and Woodcraft, those kinds of stores. Easy to find. All right, so we'll get to the radius one here in a bit, but that was the flat. I usually use the flat on outside roundovers, outside radiuses. So right now, the flat is serving its purpose by connecting those 2 inside lines. And this edge right here, I'll kind of mark it out in a dark facet so you can see here, is my primary chamfer. It's the grade that sets the depth of whatever radius shape I'm creating. Now, another tool I want you to see that might be a slight upgrade is the Shinto rasp. You can pick this up a number of different places. I grabbed this one through the Veritas company. What's unique about the Shinto rasp is it's got 2 flat surfaces and this matrix of a very fine metal just weaved throughout this whole handle unit. The one side is very rough, and the other side is relatively fine. They have different versions. They have a handle on the edge. I actually like the one without the handle, just because it's that handle is a little bit too much leverage on it. Though I do end up having a little bit of a sore spot with my fingers when I'm holding on to this. So maybe a little tape around the finger, because it's a little rough on that outside. The only thing I know about the Shinto rasp is that it does everything that the microplanes does, but it ends up, especially on this side here, gives me a much finer cut. leaves my my cut strokes a little bit more refined. So it's a nice upgrade. The downfall is that there's no round over on this. They only have flat that I know of designs, and it would be nice to see this in a round design too. The one thing that I have recently been noting that actually is to our advantage here is that it does not cut on the outside of the tool. It's just a flat surface of metal. And what's really nice is to work up, I'll give you an example here, of a stopped shape. Maybe I've got another shape terminating on my other radius, and I can actually do some sculptural work right up to a very nice crisp edge. Right? And that's something that has been really something I've been learning lately, is to how to use that to my advantage, is this this sharp edge detailing that Shinto will give. Most of the other files and rasps, they have some level of cutting action on that edge, so no matter how much movement my tool has, I tend to over-consume that edge, and gets me in a little bit of trouble. So that is one benefit of the Shinto rasp. I can create a very crisp detail in the rasping process. Now you can see here in the rough side, leaves a little bit more rough marks, and the fine side can clean that up as well. Again, I'm holding this at a 45-degree angle. Not too bad. That's a pretty nice little tool. So check around. I think you know, again, your woodcraft stores have this, and then also Lee Valley Veritas. So that's a nice tool. I use this a lot. It's a good one. Let's see what else we want to talk about. So as far as quick entry-level ones, I'd say those are the most easily accessible. Beware, just know that not all files and rasps are the same. They are all of different values, different qualities. And if you'll take a note on this one, this is your standard Nicholson brand. Nothing wrong with this. This is a very nice one, but it's nowhere close to the quality of some of these other ones I'm going to show you. But I still use your standard Nicholson file, because actually it does come along and do a really nice job at cleaning up some of the tooling marks. So I can fair my lines out even just a little bit more if I wanted to, if it was important in the cleaning up process. Right? A little bit more lightweight filing marks cleans it up really nice. Okay, we're still on the primary chamfer. I'm going to carry that out all the way through here, but I'm going to introduce this tool here. This is the Pattern Maker's rasp. This one happens to be by the Gramercy Tool Company. There's a number that I want you to see. The three names that I'm familiar with here that you should be familiar with are the Gramercy Tool Company, the RU, and the Liogé Tool Company. The last two are, I'll put a link up at some point on the site, and those two are made by French companies, and they do a really nice job on these hand-stitched Pattern Maker's files. If you are going to take this seriously and you want to get into the sculptural woodworking, I highly encourage you to invest in a couple of these hand-stitched files. They are worth every penny you put into it, but they're pretty expensive. They can be up in anywhere from $60 to $100 range. So this is something you want to be ready for a good investment. Maybe put it on your Christmas list. I'm going to use this one. It's a I don't remember the grain on this one. This one's I think it's an 11 grain. That's a little more rough, and it's a longer file, right? I'm going to put this down so you can see, and you see that it also does a really nice job of knocking off material in a hurry, right? Okay. Now, one thing I do want to let you know, if you are in the market for one of these and you do want to spend a little money and go ahead and purchase one of these, if you go to the Liège company, which is again one of those French companies that make these, they will actually custom order whether you're a right-handed or left-handed operator. Standard is for right-handers. I'm left-handed, so I'm just now aware of that as an extra feature of one of these tools. I kind of have learned to adapt to right-handed tools, but I'm really excited to be able to have opportunity to get to a left-handed version of this. Now these hand-stitch files, rasps, excuse me, are they cut in so many different directions, so even though it may not be specifically to your handedness, it still works really well. Okay, so that was the rougher version, and right now we've created a 45-degree chamfer that I call my primary chamfer. I'm going to use a finer version of this, the 13 grain, and that's going to clean it up ever so slightly. Now, to make sure, this is in an attempt to create a consistent shape radius. We're going to show you some teardrop versions, and we're going to show you some changing inside and outside profiles. Again, this is in an attempt to learn how to practice this technique. The next step is to actually working off of this profile right here, this top line and the bottom line. We've broken an edge. You can see that top edge here, and then likewise that bottom edge. What we want to do is actually kind of knock those edges off just ever so slightly. But our approach angle is going to come in at a slightly lower angle, whereas before our tool, let's see, I'll use this guy here. Our tool was up at the 45-degree angle. We're now going to lower it down to about 22.5 degrees. So if you think about it, there's the horizon, there's 90 degrees. There's my 45, the one we just did, and following that 45, I want to be in that 22.5 degree angle, right about there. And we're going to do that on both the high and the low side of this line. Doesn't take too much in this one, it's just a lightweight, and by the way, I am elongating this tool a little bit. It helps for my cut stroke to be a little bit cleaner. I'm just knocking off that top edge. Now back to that 45. I'm going to lift the handle all the way up here, and it's going to be on that 22.5 degrees off of 90, and I want to knock off the bottom edge. So I should at this point have 3 distinct cut facets that represents the basic anatomy of the roundover that I'm trying to create. Let's see if I can draw that out. We've got this upper facet right about here. We've got the original 45 degree, and we've got the lower facet. Now, one thing I want you to make sure you have nearby, got to grab, give me a second, is a good low-level light. And I mean low level, I'm referring to low angle. And the intention here is to be able to interpret our shape a little bit. As I push this light raking across this edge, I begin to see the different details as they emerge. Let's see, I'm trying to look at the camera and watch this at the same time. I think for you, this might be the most telling moment right here. And I can still see the top original edge and then these individual facets. And as the light creates a highlight and casts a shadow, it's going to do it in an uneven fashion at this point because of all those facets. So a good low-level angled light will really help interpret that shape. And now my intention is to blend. I want to take one of these tools. I'm going to take this 13 grain here and just start blending. Now, theoretically, I could kind of begin to subdivide each of those layers yet again, but that's kind of overkill. If I've done the basic 3 parts, and I've got the basic shape that I'm looking for here. Now, if anyone has sat in one of my seminars at the woodworking shows, you're probably thinking he's saying everything he's ever spoken of at the show, and he's doing it right here. Well, usually we have to go pretty quickly during our seminars at the show. And so now I'm going to take you a little bit more in depth. I want you to see what it looks like when it's a different shape. That's pretty straightforward, what you just saw there. Now we need to make sure it is we have explained this process in a more complicated scenario. So I'm going to do that whole thing over again. And what I want you to consider is what would it look like if we had to do this on a profiled edge, right? What I just did over here was on a straight edge. But my leg or whatever part that I'm working on is not going to be consistent in profile, right? It's going to be a unique shape. We've got lots of different templates for different parts and shapes. So this is going to be where it typically happens. Again, we're going to just do everything I just showed you, but the tooling becomes a little bit more challenging. We have to be thinking through this transition of shape. So let's go ahead and take the next step of what I'd like you to do for practice. Again, working off of just a block of wood. Before we get actually into the real thing. Okay. So we've got this kind of a gentle profile. I've got an outside round on this side, and I got an inside round on this side right here. Again, the same concept applies. I'm going to follow the line. Let's say I want a 3/4 inch radius, but this time I'm actually going to transition from a fairly small detail out to a fairly sloping or significant roundover on the end here. So let's just call those out. Let's say down here I'm looking for no more than a 3/8 inch radius, and by the time I get down here I'm going to go to a whole 1 inch radius. So that's a pretty significant transition. Well, I'm going to start off that same process before. I could measure out my little 1 inch radius right about here and mark that. In fact, I probably will, so you can see this process. On this tail end, it's going to be about 1 inch. And up on the front end here, it's not going to be much more than 3/8 all told. Now, at some point, I've got to get from a 3/8 to a whole inch. So about halfway through, you know, we need to have there's a difference of 5/8 there. So I'm going to add, maybe 5/16 on top of that 3/8, and that should land me, what is that, 11/16, somewhere around there. It don't have to be, absolutely accurate. Everything doesn't have to land in systematic approach like that, but for today's session, I'll do that. So you can see on the top side, there's my 11/16, there's my 3/8, and there's my 1 inch. What I call these are my benchmarks. Progressively along an edge, I benchmarked my shape. And that's how I get kind of a flowing profile feel. At some point, this will just become intuitive, and you don't have to do all the laying out of this. But for now, it's really helpful to wrap your mind around this benchmarking process. Now, from there, all I have to do is just connect the dots. So I'm going to take, I got to do this, got to move my body because I'm left-handed here. I went from the 1 inch position, and I'm using my ring finger to guide along this edge. actually the ring finger and my pinky finger, just kind of glide along this edge, and I could adjust the depth of my pencil to accommodate the reach that I'm looking to get here. So right now I'm way out at about a 1-inch mark, but I'm choking up on my pencil grip as I come along this process, and by the time I get down to this 11/16 mark, I've choked it up enough to cross that benchmark, and likewise all the way down here, choking it up yet again as I get down to the smaller profile. Now, same has to happen here. There's on the front edge, there's my 3/8. Now I'm going to get it a little bit bigger to reach to that side, and bigger yet to reach to the 1-inch. Now, I could go and use my marking gauge, but I'm just going to do this by freehand. I'm going to take what I perceive to be half that again. Same process as before. Half again. It takes a little bit of practice to learn that art. Is basically as I'm drawing, these fingers are sliding up my pencil and choking the reveal, the amount of material that happens to be from that edge. So I can make that mark, or choke it up, make a mark, choke it up again, make a mark. That takes a little bit of dexterity to learn while you're in motion, but that's kind of the key to learning how to kind of freehand this a little bit. Okay, let's go through that same process again. Nothing has changed. All the same tooling. Now, if this were a steeper radius, I might want to move over to a round tool, but I'm going to start again by using this flat tool. Real lightweight, hardly anything up on that top end. A little bit more in the middle. Bigger sweeps on the end. All right. Again, let me kind of mark that in my marker so you can see the limits of that edge. Okay. Well, that's a pretty little shape right there. That's really nice. Now, that was the primary chamfer, and now we're going to go into the secondary bevels. Again, moving to the 45-degree, knocking off that top edge. Everything follows relative to the original profile. So down here, my cut will be a little bit wider. This one will be medium size. And this one up here will just be barely a small little buzz on that. 45-degree. Well, that's nice. You can still see the original chamfer that was left alone here, and my 22.5s come in here, rolling those edges, but again, relative to the original shape. This would be a great thing to practice. If you spend a whole week of practicing this, you'll really get good. This is both an inside radius and an outside radius. So the inside transition to the outside, a lot of times we accidentally put a little bit too much pressure on that transition moment. You got to see how that flares consistently and fairing out. We'll talk about fairing these lines here in a little bit, but let's go ahead now and just finish the job. I've already done those primary and the secondary chamfers, so now all I have to do is blend that shape out. My tool is rolling over the edge as we continue to shape this. So nobody's asked any questions yet, so I'm assuming you're having fun watching, but if anything jumps out at you, feel free to interact on the question and answer site. Now, that is very nice. Now that will ultimately radius out and completely, you want to have it finished by the time you get to those exit lines. Those original mark lines that we had. Yeah, that's nice. Let's see if I can hold this to the camera so you guys can see here a little bit better. Okay, so we've started with a fairly tight profile, and it gets down to a much deeper sweep. Now, as I look at it, I think I've got a little bit more transition work to do right here. You can see that harder edge as I see the light flashing up against that. That's how we go from a deeper radius transitioning into a shallow radius. And that's going to give you the opportunity to sculpt on an outside edge like that. Now, the next practice, I don't know, I'll spend a ton of time here on this one, but this isn't yet three-dimensional. There is times in our work that we're going to be taking that shape and moving it three-dimensionally. We're all out on one single plane right now. But what if we wanted to roll that into the backside of this tool, or excuse me, of this block of wood? What if that changed in profile? How would we move that from one edge around to the backside? And that's where things get really complicated. Let me show you an example. I've got this sitting in the side view here. It's been in my shop for a little bit, so it's a little dusty. It's a mirror that I'm working on. But I want you to see how this sculptural work happens. I've got this three-dimensional mirror that all started off as just profiles. I just bandsawed a whole bunch of parts and pieces. And that provided the transitional, profile to work through. But this piece is radiused, and that line, this edge right here, is thrown all the way out to this outside profile and then picked back to the inside profile. And so there's a unique experience here by being able to take everything I'm teaching you and mapping out changes of shape. So this was a fun project. I'm still kind of trying to wrap up the details on this one. I see. Dave, thank you for participating. There's a good question. Okay, Dave is asking me the question, would a spoke shave work for this type of shaping? Absolutely. A spoke shave is great for this type of shaping. In fact, it's what I primarily used before I was introduced to a few of these pattern-making rasps. A spoke shave, however, I find, obviously for the tradition of the tool, by all means. And in the future class, I can come prepared to teach that. I don't typically bring that out for first-timers. Primarily, a spoke shave has a lot higher learning curve. It's going to create a lot more frustration in connecting with the line and the ideas that you're trying to work. It's going to be more about the tool and not the process, or not the visualization of what you see. So often, many of us get bogged down by the manipulation of the tool and trying to learn how to set the tool up right, and that tool holds us back from progress. Now, I'm not trying to say that it's not important by any means. A spoke shave is a very important tool. There's a number of different spoke shaves and even draw knives and things that will be helpful for this process. But I think it would be very important, Dave, specifically, to not start there. Because a spoke shave obviously is subject to grain direction, sharpening, angle of the bevel, lots of little details that I'd rather save for a next step up. The spoke shave is very, very rewarding, but can also keep people who are beginning at this process from their potential. I really want to connect with some of the creative ideas that you might have. And the creative ideas will not flow freely if at some point you are so bogged down on a tool that's not working for you. So that's a long-winded way of saying, Dave, thank you for the comment. Yes, indeed, spoke shave is highly applicable in this situation. But I want to start with the learning process with these pattern maker files and rasps. They tend to provide greater results faster. Or equal results. There's just a little bit of sanding here. The difference being you would end up possibly with a little cleaner cut because this is an abrasion type cut, whereas a spoke shave obviously is a shear, it's a slicing cut. Okay. Let me make a little cleanup here and transition to a different technique that I want you to see. One set of tools I didn't mention before I walk away from that. Here's a set of little Japanese files that I've picked up from Rockler. They're only 5 inches long, I think, from handle to tip. It's a flat and a radius. And I actually like this set. They weren't too expensive, and they've got a nice little shear cut for them on them. I don't go to them all the time. But when I am working on a real tight corner, maybe something I have a hard time getting a full reach on the cut as I would need for some of these other tools, and it tends to not cut so well because I don't have the long approach. These guys cut really hard and fast in corners. I can do a little shear cutting, and especially this round, I can roll up a tight corner or an inside detail and roll that out. So if you're interested. Again, I don't know the price on these. I wish I should have checked this out for you. But these are fairly inexpensive. And again, Rockler, Woodcraft, those kinds of stores would have these little Japanese files. Right? You'll find yourself, if you have them, you'll find yourself going to them kind of in a emergency situation where you really need to get that inside radiuses or little details cut. Okay. Okay. This is important stuff to get here fairly quickly because we're moving into sculptural work not too far out in this current project. So the next thing I want you to see is a little bit more on the sculpting with the power tools. There's a couple power tools that I use primarily for sculpting a seat. We can certainly use adze and seat scorps. I've tried them. I've tried all the traditional tools, and I have no problem with them, but I'm trying to be efficient. I want to balance out my love for hand tools and my appreciation for the power tool that gets a job done fast. So I have found that this process with a couple of these power tools, I can sculpt out a seat within about a half an hour, whereas it used to take me most all day. So I've got a seat here from our project. I want you to see it's actually already been sculpted out. I'm going to kind of show you some of the techniques that I got to this point. This is the seat that we're working on. You're going to need to know how we go about this sculpting process and how to gain control. This is a very subjective experience. We don't have a guide or a feather board or some sort of bearing to guide our process. It's fairly interpretive with our hands and our arms and our body. So we'll take a look at a couple tools that I would recommend. It is in our tool list. If you are one of our members for the class, we're working on our dining room chair project, you've got a tool list. For those of you who are just visiting, this is two of many that I talk about. Let's see, let me get this locked down here. Actually, the first thing I need you to see is how we establish our depth. Taking into consideration the fact that we are doing a lot of freehand work with sculpting. Sorry, I bounced the camera. We're doing a freehand sculpting. We've got to kind of know when to call it quits, when to be done with our sculpting. These tools take off a lot of material, so that's not the issue. The real issue is when do we stop? How do we know we're done with a sculpting process? So if at all possible, I want you to kind of see how if we're creating a inside radius, like a scooped out seat as an example, how we can use a Forstner bit to establish our depth. It's not how much to do with this material, it's just with these tools, it's how to know when to stop. So we set ourselves up over the drill press. And we're going to put a Forstner bit. Doesn't really matter what size. This is, I think, about 5/8 Forstner bit. And I'm going to set it up in the drill press, and I'm going to drop the drill press down so that the tip of the Forstner is buried, and it's just sitting on top of the surface of whatever object I'm sculpting, right? From there, I can go over to the side of my drill press and set up a calibrated depth stop. I can set it up at a 1/2 inch. I can set it up at 3/4 of an inch, 7/8, whatever it may be. And if there is a terrain or a profile that we're trying to create on the bottom of our seat or another object, we would create a certain depth to sculpt down to. Now I did this out on the edge here so you can see. This first one we're at about a 1/2 inch deep. The second one I think is about 5/8, and I progressively went deeper. This is kind of what we're doing on our seat project. We're establishing progressive depths. Now if you are in the class, you will see this exactly where and how to drill, but suffice it to say that if you're kind of just exploring this, you want to try this out, set yourself varying depths. Go deeper, go shallower, go up again, down again, whatever it may be. This establishes your overall shape. And when you hit to the bottom of Forstner, you know you've gone as far as you need to go, and that's where you're going to stop. I'm going to start off by showing you guys just an introduction to this Arbortech tool. This is, for me, a relatively new version of the Arbortech tool that they've had. The company's been around for quite a while, but the earlier Arbortech tool that I had the cutter head out on the far outside profile, way on the outside edge. And so when I started using that tool, there was so much torque on that cutter head that it did a lot of pulling and yanking, and I felt really somewhat out of control on this tool. A few years ago, they redesigned their cutter head. This is the turbo plane, and it's got cutting shears on the face of their cutter head, and it's a really great improvement. It gives me so much more control over this sculpting process. It doesn't grab and pull, and so I've learned to use this tool to my advantage to get a lot of material out of the way fast. It puts out heavy shavings rather than a bunch of sawdust, and so it's much easier to do it in your shop. It's not going to put a ton of dust on every edge, whereas some other tools that we're going to show you put out a lot more dust. So this one will make a pretty messy pile right where you're at, but it doesn't put a bunch of floaty sawdust all the way throughout your shop. Now, that being said, this guy will remove wood in a hurry. And the best thing I can suggest for you is to relax your body position and your grip. Let's see here if you can see. I'll roll you back a little bit. My body position here, if I were to start sculpting on this, I see most people step up to this with a really tight grip here. They hold on super tight, and they're real tense in this cut. And they're just really concerned over overcutting or slipping or doing anything. And one of the key ingredients is starting off with just having kind of some loose shoulders, right? If I can relax my body a little bit and kind of be up on the balls of my feet here, I'm going to get a little bit more fluidity and motion and rhythm in this process. That being said, also, I really want you to relax your grip on this tool. A death grip is just going to hold you too tight, and you're never going to be able to get a fluid motion. A little bit more relaxed grip is going to be able to calm you down and create a little bit more fluidity. I think of these tools as if I were using a spray, a rattle can of spray paint. I want to be in motion. I don't want to kind of stop and if I were spraying my spray can, I wouldn't start right on the object, right? It would be moving across my object in a flowing manner. Same thing here. We want to kind of be in motion and movement. If I ever stop, it's going to create a divot or a big heavy cut. All right, let's see if we can try that out here for you guys a chance to look at this. All right. One thing that I want to highlight, and I did this intentionally, so you could see the detailing here. Notice that my edge right now is somewhat scalloped, mostly because in the area right around the hole, I created these little divots, right? My cut action grabbed around that hole. And you'll learn pretty quickly that as your terrain is uneven to start off with, you're going to have to try to find a way to blend across that and not let this tool follow the existing terrain. You'll get a much better results if you can create more fluid motion. So rather than letting the 3 o'clock position on this cutter head fall right into the holes, I'm going to try to glide up a little bit higher around it and skitter around those holes so I can have a little more fluid process. I'm holding this tool, by the way, with the handle on the left-hand side. You've probably heard me say this before, but the handle is always on the left-hand side. It's because we're pulling against the rotation of the cutter head. Also, I want to make sure that you have a sense of when I talk about tooling position of this grinder. Position does matter a lot. There's a lot of different aspects of which we could approach this cut, but there's no right or wrong, but we just need to figure out what it is it's doing during that time. Here's the toe edge of the tool. That's kind of in that 12 to 3 o'clock position from my perspective. And then also there's the heel edge. That's from the 3 to 6 o'clock position. I'm rarely anywhere else but those two positions. Occasionally I'm right up against on the 12 o'clock position, but I'm more likely in that at 1:30 range and that 4:30 range. I'm talking about the as if this is the a clock. So in the upper range is the toe, and the back end here is the heel. I'm usually up on the toe edge. Let's go ahead and finish this cut here. And my goal is just to get to the bottom of these Forstner holes. Now you'll know that a Forstner tip has a little bit of extra tip right on there, right? That little, probably about 1/8 of an inch protrusion is really helpful in our knowing when to stop. Because if I get to the bottom of the Forstner shoulder, I can leave that tip alone, and I can clean that up with some of my blending and sculpting tools that we'll show you here in a little bit. Notice that I got rid of pretty much all the shoulder work. There's no more. Okay, I lie. It does put a bunch of sawdust everywhere. At least within the range here, is 4 or 5 foot range. All right. I've got my little tip right there. That's the top of that deeper Forstner. There's the tip. There's the tip. There's the tip. So I still see all those Forstner tips. Hope you can see that on the camera. That tells me I'm on grade. I've gotten pretty much right to where I wanted to go. My profile is progressively going deeper here, and all I have to do then is to blend out the remaining portion of that to get this to be a really nice sculpted shape. So the Arbortech is one that you might want to consider picking up. Not saying you have to. It's not the only option here, but it does do a good job of getting some bulk material removed. If you're just doing, one round of sculptural woodworking, and you're still, not sure if this is for you, I wouldn't necessarily consider investment in it because it's an expensive tool to be just sitting around. If you want to do a lot of this, that might be a good place to start. The next tool I want you to see is the next cutter head I have here. This one is the Holy Galahad by the King Arthur Company. The Holy Galahad I've used for many, many years, and you'll see I use this in a lot of my techniques when it comes to sculptural work, just because I built it around this tool. So this other one does a whole heck of a lot of material removal fast. This one removes it fast too. But I can see through this one. That's the holy part. See? I can see right through it. So as it's spinning, I can still see the details as I'm working on. I would recommend getting the medium or the coarse grit. The fine grit is just not necessarily helpful to me. It tends to clog up too fast. And the whole point of this is to remove material fast. So I'm usually at the coarse. But if someone wanted to be a little bit more delicate, they might want to consider the medium. That being said, the only one I use is the round. More power to you if you want to get the flat, but the round is the better profile for the sculptural work because I get softer edges. Now, that being said, it's what I've used. That's not to say that you might use the flat in a different application, but for what I do and the sculpting process and my chair work specifically, the round one is the better profile. It's kind of a, semicircle here, or a quarter circle is what I really mean to say. One thing I also want you to see, if you are in the market for a right angle grinder, I don't really care about the name brand in this. Milwaukee's a good one. I've enjoyed using theirs. But whatever you do, if you are buying one, I've learned the hard way that this switch, the inline switch, is the better option. The ones that have the switch on the side, they tend to be a little bit hard to use because it's on or it's off. This one is a dead man switch, and when you're squeezing it, it's on, or the moment you let go, it's off. I don't have to go fiddle around here for an on and off switch. And the side carriage on and off switch, like the one I was using over here, they tend to clog up. I don't know if you can see up in here. The sawdust has already pulled up into the side, right, and has beginning to foul that switch. I've had numerous times when I've turned the switch on and nothing happens because the contacts are all fouled up with sawdust. So if you have one of these, go ahead and use it, but make sure you blow it out. Get a good air source, compressed air, and just blow the thing out so it'll be clean. That's a good habit to keep these a little bit more long lasting. But if you're going to go out and buy one, get the one. It's a little bit more. It's probably 20, 30 bucks more. But this guy's going to be a little bit more helpful in the sculptural process. What else about these guys? I use this in the rundown mode sometimes, so I'll run it up. And as it's slowing down, I can do a little bit of feathering. So that's a possibility. The only concern about this guy is there's no dust collection built into it, so it really does make a big mess. If you have the chance to step outside and let that just blow in the wind, it's a whole lot better. I know not every shop has that ability. Sometimes you're in the inside a house, down in a basement. If you can find a way to gain some control over the dust of this thing, by all means, more power to you. One recommendation may be to consider a small little tent around that area to keep that dust under control. That's probably the biggest downfall to the sculptural process. Though it provides a ton of creative shaping, it is a ton of a mess. So I'll address that here in a little bit with some of the Festool tools that we have that I think will, if you're really into this, some of the Festool tools will really help handle some of that dust collection issue. But I want to introduce this guy a little bit more and some of the technique that I work with this tool. One thing that you need to know is there's really no right or wrong way to hold this tool. If you look at this from the perspective that I'm holding it to you, you're seeing the full radius of this tool. That's the equivalent of me putting this on my workpiece straight up and down, right? Turn around like that. I would be embedding that full shape. That's a bigger radius than if I were to hold it from your perspective to a side view angle. That side view angle, you're only seeing a small profile, right? Probably not much more than 3/4 of an inch. So that would be the same as if I was holding this tool in a very low angle approach, right? This real low angle approach here, giving me kind of that tighter radius. I'll show you where that's mostly used, most commonly used for me. The back end of a seat. See, I need to approach this back end and have a deeper radius in there. So it'll be kind of holding that tool on a low angle profile and sculpting out this back end. I'll give it over to the seat here in just a minute so you can see that some more. But I wanted you to see the relationship between the approach angle that we're holding this at. So there's no right or wrong. So consider either the handle straight up, all the way down, or anywhere in between. Those are all different angles to approach it for the sculpting process. Now, a tool like this, I can feather out my my profile a lot more gracefully than that other one. One thing to know is there's a real relationship between pressure and movement. This tool, if left in one spot, will dig a fairly aggressive hole. I'll show you. A certain amount of pressure, staying in the same spot. Will dig a fairly quick hole. With that same amount of pressure drawn out, of course it's not cutting in the same spot, so it's drawing that pressure out, and it actually serves as a way to blend. It actually, that pressure, the equal amount of pressure but being drawn across the surface, creates a more blending stroke. And so it's very important to balance that movement and pressure in a tool like this. All right. Now, let's move over to the actual seat that we have here. Now, a lot of this is already in our videos that are coming up. I wanted you to kind of have a head start on this. What time is it? Let's see here. When I go to start sculpting out this seat, the first thing is to establish kind of that low valley. If I were to sit on the seat, my legs would be saddled in those low points from halfway between the center line and the outside of our template profile. Right about there, that's halfway. That is where our legs will kind of come to rest. Butt cheeks in the back end here. This whole back end is like one singular grade, one profile. We're not digging out these big old pockets here. It's one big grade, right? Progressively deeper holes all the way down, like I just showed you, and we're going to sculpt down to that. I usually sculpt out about a 4-inch wide trough down the middle here. And one of the things I want you to see is a pivot position. Pivot position is all about where I make connection with my workpiece. If it's at all possible, when you're sculpting a seat, especially, to find a way to connect with the material you're cutting. If I just hold this tool up here, then I've got no control over this, right? I come varying different profiles, very different approaches, and it's very haphazard. If I can drop the back end of this tool down and find a comfortable spot, my opposite hand, my right hand, will slip down to the back end, and I tend to just flip, bring these fingers right around that edge, right? And that gives me the chance to sculpt through this cut. Now, once again, like using a spray can, I would want to start my motion off my workpiece and blend through. One of the hardest parts for people to get used to is the breaking of your wrist here. It's very important to break that rest in the cut because it will provide an exit as you raise out of this cut. You don't want to stop and camp out in one spot, or you're going to end up digging a big hole right here. Right? So my motion would be this way, sculpting, sculpting, sculpting. And there's my pivot position. Now it's not, again, a heavy grip. It's just kind of a contact point. If I need to get up a little bit higher, I can even raise the tool up in the back end like this, just to have access, some contact. It gives me control. But there are times when our workpiece is smaller. We're not sculpting out a seat. We might be sculpting out, on an art piece or whatever, and we need to have some connectivity to this without touching the workpiece. Ideally, that's the best because that kind of grounds me to the shape that I'm working with. But if that's not the case, if you can't make connection with the workpiece, then I highly encourage you to find a way to draw your arm in, bring it in closer, right? Their back end, maybe even connect to your hip, right? And use that, maybe your elbow to your hip or your wrist right around here, and use that as a pivot position. You'll note, bring the camera down here, way down here, you'll note when I'm doing that my feet are at a fairly significant stretch, right? A nice wide stance, not really wide, but relatively wide, so that I've got good body posture, and I'm at a 45-degree approach to my work surface. That gives me the best when it comes to this body posture. If I lead with this arm, it's kind of weird because I'm kind of closed off. If I lead with my right foot, that gives me the room to open up my shoulders to the cut. Now, on this side, I will be sculpting here, but when I'm done with that one, I'll be flipping this around and working from this side. Let's see if I can change positions here. And I'll be working from this side, sculpting the other direction. So it really depends on where you're at and what direction you're going to go, but you're always going to be going from a right to left motion against the direction of the cutter head. I've already sculpted the seat, so I'm not going to do a whole lot on this one here, but I am going to dig out now one of my my grinders from Festool here. If there's any questions on either one of those, feel free to shout out. What we're going to do in the future is when you are starting to work on this, I'm going to actually have you join me on these chat sessions. The Google Plus format allows actually more interaction. Right now I'm just kind of talking and you're watching. But when you are working on your project, my goal is to actually help you, not just talk to you about it. So in the future, if you want to be part of this session as a way to kind of improve your technique, and you're willing to be part of it, I'll actually have a way to get you on video, and we can kind of go over your technique, and that might be a great way for all of us to learn a little bit. Okay, give me a moment. I got to get one more tool out for you. Okay, one tool that's really going to help if you are doing a lot of this is the Festool right angle grinder. I usually have this connected to one of the Festool vac systems. I've actually packed up all my vacs because I'm heading to Des Moines, Iowa tomorrow, and so I'm just going to do this without the vac for the moment. Actually, I do have one left over here. Hang on. Okay, there we go. The nice thing about the Festool right angle sander is that the dust collection shroud is all the way around, so I can hold it at any position and it will shift all the way around. So it does help pull in that dust and mitigate some of the issues that we are experiencing here. This tool, if you happen to get a chance to work on one of these, it takes a little bit to get used to, but I want you to see some of that process of sculpting with this tool. So at the point that I've done some of that big grinder work, gotten the bulk of the material away, but I'm never going to have a perfect surface. I want to be able to blend some of that work. So we're going to come along here with the Festool right angle grinder, and I want to be holding this tool ever so slightly off of flat. Let me pull up a block of wood here and see if we can illustrate this. Oh, we got another question. Somebody noticed. Diami. Hi, Diami. The blade guard. So the question is, can the Holy Galahad or similar type blade be used with a blade guard on? I've got two different setups that I use here, and the one that I had out here, I've augmented the blade guard a little bit. I'm not sitting here recommending this because I wouldn't feel comfortable making that recommendation. But I have this. They all have the blade guard on it. The guard for me is about the area where my hand is, where my left hand is. It's not as much about where my right hand is because I tend to hold my tool way, way down at the very end. You'll find that when you have one of these with the full guard on, let's see if I can dig one of those out. So here's one with the full guard on it. All right. The only thing that's exposed is a minimum area here, and by all means, this is offering greater protection. But I found that in the sculptural process on the seat, it is very difficult to get the full reach, and you will find yourself frustrated with the reach, especially around this pommel area right in here. Right. As I'm sculpting here, we tend to drag the guard on the pommel, and interferes with the cut. So if you are going to do any augmentation here, just a little bit of a little cut off of this guy would probably help a ton. That would be the only thing I feel comfortable fully recommending. That other one I got pretty zealous with and cut the guard off pretty heavy. But I'm comfortable working with a tool like this with a small amount of augmentation on there. But that's up to you. The issue, if you want to maintain the whole guard, which obviously gives you the most safety, you're going to have to find yourself in a much higher approach angle to most of the cutting action. That higher approach angle will limit you with some of the blending strokes. The lower the handle angle, the more I can blend my stroke with that. But that leads me to a nice little moment here with the Festool right angle sander. This guy will really take the place of any blending stroke that I need on that tool anyway. Same handle configuration. It's permanently affixed on this left-hand side. This tool has a variety of different speeds that it can work off of. I'm usually in kind of a high speed here, probably about the number 5 position, not all the way up. And the thing I want to show you on this guy, I'm going to kind of move over to a different flat surface to work with. There's a lot you can learn from a tool like this. I know a number of you have this tool and find that it's really nice for dust collection, but don't know exactly how to operate it in terms of holding the tool. So I want to give you an example here. As I hold this tool, I'm going to show you that the first thing I want you to do is learn how to hold this with one hand. Not that we're going to use it with one hand, but I want you to learn what happens when you hold this with one hand. I'm going to illustrate it with off, and then I'm going to turn it on and prove my point here. I'm going to get down here so you can see it while I talk. As I hold this with one hand, if I lift up a little bit, right, it's going to be on the toe edge of the tool, and it's going to want, because of the rotation of the tool, it's going to want to climb backwards, right? If I conversely drop the tail end of the tool, right, onto the heel edge, where am I? Right there. Onto the heel edge, it's going to want to climb forward because it's rolling out of the cut, right? Does that make sense? On the toe edge, climbs back. On the heel edge, it climbs forward. That information alone is worthy of a lot of attention, because you will use this, if you use a tool like this a lot, you will use that information to subtly know how to slightly adjust your movements when you are hitting a high or a low point in the terrain that you're working on. If you come across a high point, right, and it catches, it's going to want to pull back. If I run across a low point or a valley, it's going to want to fall forward. When I do that in sculpting out a leg or a seat, that information will tell me if I'm on a high or a low spot, and I get that feedback. Now, when you're first learning that, it takes a very, very long time to kind of begin to interpret that. But I now want to show you just on a flat surface what that looks like. Flip that dust collector on now. I've got this in manual position right now because I'm not hooked up to the dust collector. But normally, when I turn this tool on, it comes on with the dust collection. All right, so watch what I'm talking about here. Hold it in one hand. Right? As I lift it up, it wants to draw back. You should try that. Lift up, it draws back. Now I'm going to go down with it. As I go down, it climbs forward. My intention is to hold this tool on my work surface just on the toe edge. Let's see here. Go this way. There we go. Ever so slightly on the toe edge. Not heavily, not perfectly flat, but just up a fraction on the toe edge. All the cutting action happens right here. Let me go turn that back off. All the cutting action is up on this upper quadrant, typically, just kind of at that intersection between the 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock position, just above center. That way, when I hit terrain, a high or a low point, let's see if I can catch it right here, I can feel that shape. And my intention is to hold this tool relatively tangent to whatever profile I'm in. So there's an inside curve and an outside radius. Now these are small examples I'm giving you, but it really helps when I'm blending out a profile of a leg. Now, that tool will typically, as it rolls over this outside radius into an inside profile, want to kind of high center or center on the tool. So you'll start feeling that moment of interpretation and respond to it accordingly. So that right angle sander, the Festool RAS 115, it is, let's see where it is, there's the label right there. That is the tool of choice for me when it comes to a lot of this sculptural work. You'll see me use this in our lessons on some of our chair design. This is not the only tool to use. If you can't afford it or don't feel compelled to get it, that's fine. There's plenty of other resources out there. But if you have the resources, this would be the one to grab because of the dust collection and the techniques that we can use with this tool. I want to take a moment. I'm going to end on this here in just a minute, and I'm open to fielding any other questions if you guys want to jump on board. Got my whiteboard here. I'm going to bring in. I want to show you the concept that we teach a lot here at the school called fairing a line. Simply put, the fairing a line is trying to have a blended shape in transition. You know, you might have made a leg profile, a back leg. You got one edge here, and you know there's a foot. I don't even know what I'm drawing right now. I'm just drawing some lines. Right? But let's say at one point it gets kind of fat, right? It goes too big in that area. Maybe our bandsaw work was a little bit sloppy, and we kind of forced it back into compliance to pick up our line, right? And so that was the actual line rather than what we wanted to cut. It feels like that's our low spot right here. The kind of that little kink, that little bend where it kind of transitions hard. And we've got to fair that moment, right? Fairing a moment like that, I'll kind of exaggerate it for now. It takes a little bit of visualization. A lot of people tell me when they start this process that they think of themselves as not really a creative person, or not being able to draw, or not being able to do this kind of work. And I confidently feel that each and every one of us has the ability to draw. We have the ability to do this. The problem is, have we trained our eyes to see? Can we see what we're looking for? We're so used to having guides and controls in our cuts that we don't teach ourselves to see things. And much of what I try to teach, and we've got a lot of time into this that we got to spend on this, is to see the lines. Everything about design is the lines. The lines are so important. A subtle change in a line can mean the difference between something looking clunky and something looking nice and gentle and elegant. Well, here's one of those moments where I've got to fix maybe a little bit of an issue here on my drawing. Got this big old wide sweep, and it kind of kinks in. Sculptural woodworking is great because if that had happened on a flat surface, let's say I was drawing or working off of a flat surface. This is tough for me when I'm left-handed. I come over here. There we go. If I had a flat surface and a little divot, right? How am I going to fair out a flat surface with a little divot? It's just not going to happen, right? You're going to always see it. So anything that goes below grade is evident. But on a sculpted surface like this, or curved surface, we actually can fair that line out a little bit. And we're going to put our attention to the region just beyond that line, and definitely the region just before that line. To be able to, you would never sand out or grind out that area. We want to be able to pull, that's our lowest common moment. We've already cut that on our bandsaw. We don't want to aggressively sand or blend that out. And you wouldn't even want to do it right next to it quite yet. You're going to go, 2 or 3 inches away from it on both sides and go pick up some of that line. Let's see if I can kind of draw this in a slightly different color. Even down here, I can push that line out a little bit deeper here, which gives me the reach to blend across that profile. And in this area, I would push a little deeper to be able to pick up more gently and fair that line. So I take what was a kink, push that material out a little bit more to get to that lowest point. I guess that's a poor way of drawing it. You can see it right here, what I'm talking about. So by consuming a little bit more material up higher and a little more material down lower, we're able to fair that up and pick up that line so that it gently moves into our curve. That's going to take a little bit of practice on your part. After we do some bandsaw work on some of our legs, for those of you who are in our project, you're going to want to practice fairing a line so that your movement of your parts are gentle and sloping. I hope that made sense. We'll spend more time with that. Those of you who are in our dining room chair class, this will be kind of something you'll need to be paying attention to. Well, I gave you just a handful of moments where we got the chance to be introduced to a couple of basic techniques and some of the tools, hand tools and power tools. There's going to be a lot more that we have to offer. For those of you who are visiting us tonight, if you're interested, we've got our chair project going right now. We're kind of right in the middle of that, so I'd love to invite any of you to join us. You're welcome to be part of. For those of you who are in the chair class and you're looking for some more videos, we're posting a new one, a fresh one tonight, and this week we're also wrapping up a couple of more. So we're right on course to get some sculpting done here real soon. One other thing I want to mention, we've got on our site, since our site is new, the Woodworking Coach site is new, we've got things that we're rolling out every so often. As of today, we have a brand new forum. There's not a whole lot on it yet, so if you are a participant and you want to spend some time helping us out, asking some questions and putting some resources on our forum on our site, that would really be appreciated. We're going to use that forum as a way to communicate not only between ourselves right now, but for those who might be doing a project like this in years future, it might become a nice resource for answering questions that others have experienced. So feel free to jump on our forum. You'll see it on our main page at thewoodworkingcoach.com, and that's for you guys. So as we grow with this, there will obviously be some chance to interact and build community there. Other than that, I'm going to hang out for a minute and just see if anyone else has any other questions. We're at 8 o'clock our time, so I'll keep this to an hour and a half session. I'll certainly be seeing you guys in 2 weeks. I'm heading over to Des Moines, Iowa for the Weekend in Wood Conference, and then heading over to Denver, Colorado to teach a class over at the Woodcraft store there. So I'll be on the road again for a little bit, but that doesn't keep us from meeting again. So here in a couple weeks we'll do another live session. Wherever I'm at, we'll turn the camera on and be available for some Q&A time there as well. Well, thank you guys for participating. I hope you've had fun tonight, and happy woodworking. I'll sign off now. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Thanks. Bye.